Web Radio WCWP in Brookville, New York. TCB Radio to all of those people out there who know who we are. Rick Frischman, Rich Solomon, welcome. A beautiful day. And for those in syndication land and those who are listening to this for syndication purposes, welcome.
Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you on the radio. Mr. Solomon, nice to be back with you.
Hey, did you have a great time at Book Expo America or what?
Or what? It was amazing. Met tons and tons of fabulous people. Did a big book signing. We had hundreds of people. You were there.
I saw the medics give
That's
a tourniquet for the hand because it was swollen from all those signatures.
Oh, it was crazy. We ran out of books.
I saw the helicopter with the pallet of the extra books.
That's crazy.
From the warehouse.
So this was, by the way, for those of you just starting to listening to this show, I have a new book series called Author 101. And we were signing Author 101 Book 1, which was book proposals, Book 2, which was how to find an agent, and actually, Book 3 is just out this week, and I gave it to you as a present. I have to sign it to you. But
hot
yes,
off the press.
Hot off the press.
I'm telling you.
Which is how to get publicity, and et cetera. But you were there, and we did some fabulous interviews with, I can't believe it, when you're in radio, you could walk up, and have you ever heard of a word called chutzpah? Well, this is what my partner here has. He went up to everybody, the biggest names at BEA, and got interviews and said, I am Rich Solomon, and I have a show called Taking Care of Business on WCWP Web Radio. Well, you didn't even say web radio, just said
I said WC. I said 80. I said WCWP.
And you get one of the biggest name. I mean, people at BEA. But tell us who you got. I mean, this is amazing.
Okay, so here I am, and I kind of learned something from other BEA experiences, which is you kind of have to be a little insistent. So I went up to Tim Russard's people, and
good start.
And he's autographing 5,000 books. The mile long line to see him is out the door, up the street, past the convention center, past 2 metro stops, past the taco stand, and a used car dealership. And so I go up. I said, I would love to talk to Tim, and believe it or not, through acquired social engineering skills that I've acquired as a lawyer, I said it would be just really awesome. And I did happen to know about his prior book, which always helps,
right?
And they said, what?
Russ and Me.
Big Russ
right?
and Me.
Big
yeah.
Russ and Me about his father, which is a fantastic book.
And so I went up to his PR people. I said, just a soundbite, just a little something, just a little appetizer for the radio. And he was incredibly gracious. He must have gave, I think, a half-hour interview right before me to somebody from St. Louis, and they were there with the recorder and the whole bit and whatever. And I just said, I'll be really quick. So I came in, and I had a really good, high-quality digital recorder. And he gave me a lot of time. He was incredibly gracious, and we have, for a future upcoming show, I have all of those interviews. Now, another person.
And how long did you get to talk to him for?
At least 6 minutes.
That's a long time. I can't believe it.
Which we really got to the meat of what his book was about, why he wrote it, what did he learn about it, his relationship with him and his own son, and he's an incredibly nice guy, and I looked over his new book, and it looks like a really, really great book, and he's doing the whole book thing now, but he was just so incredibly gracious. And I also got to meet somebody kind of interestingly. I bought an Apple Macintosh Pro book, and so who do I meet? Steve Wozniak, one of the co-founders of Apple.
And did you get a free computer from him?
No, but I got something better. I got to hear his shtick about how he started Apple Computer. And that's another interview I have for us as well.
Right here, right now, on Web Radio, WCWP, you're going to hear the best interviews in America.
And I think one of the most interesting interviews that I snagged, I have 10 of them, the one of the really interesting ones that I got.
Now, this is BEA. For people who don't know, this is Book Expo America, where every author and publisher in the world goes. And this was May 29. No.
May
19, 2021 in Washington, D.C. Okay.
Although it was supposed to have evergreen shows.
That's right. Well, but we didn't say what year.
That's right.
1976.
And by the way, whenever I talk to anybody at BEA, I always say, "Do you know Rick Frischman?" And they basically say, "Everybody knows Rick Frischman."
He's so full.
So they go. You know? I go. I know. Do you know Rick? I know Rick Frischman.
So who else did he get to interview?
The head of the International Spy Museum.
Ooh.
Peter Ernest, who is a former CIA intelligence
That's a weird
officer.
name for a spy.
Well,
named Ernest. I mean, that's about the last thing that you'd think a spy would be.
He's the editor of a new book called "I Lie for a Living."
Good title.
And I talked to him about all the famous people who were spies in history. We talked about Mata Hari. We talked about George Washington. We talked about Ben Franklin. He's a great interview. And next time I'm in D.C., I have to check out the museum. I think it's spymuseum.org.
Very good.
To give him a little bit of a plug.
Well, we got to plug him, absolutely. And we will have those shows on very soon.
Oh, yeah.
At a theater near you.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. Well,
so let me just tell you about Rick. So Rick, everybody knows Rick. He's like, I'm telling you, I need to like kind of, before I go to Rick, I have to go up to him and kind of like rub elbows or something like that to get that aura going, because everybody knows him, and they all went to talk to him and his co-author in the new book series. It was wild.
It was a fun time. We have another book that I have to give it to you. The other book came out
10
since
Clowns?
I've seen it. 10 Clowns Don't Make a Circus.
I saw your co-author on that one. I saw Steve.
That's right. Did you come to our party?
Absolutely.
You were there. Well, that was in.
Let me tell you about the food. The books were good, but the food was.
What's the 10 Clowns Don't Make a Circus? What's that?
Well, this is we wanted to come up with a book about business. So this was like the 250 rules of business, things that you should do not to screw up, and basically a different rule for every business day of the year. The reason we said 250 is we couldn't write 365 rules. We just ran out of rules. So we figured, business days, 250, that's good enough. So we were trying to figure out a right title. One of our rules is called 10 Clowns Don't Make a Circus, which means if you go to a circus, you need lion tamers, you need people going shooting out of cannons, you need elephants and bears and
people to clean up after the elephants.
That's right, poop scoopers, etc. Oh yeah, that's my job, and I clean up the poop. So. That's the way it is in business, too. You need all different types of people. Just like in a radio show, if both Richard and I, it's bad enough we have the same name, but we're with the same personality, it would be boring. But because we are
lunatics,
that's correct, then it's not so stupid.
Lunatics
so
with sanity,
that's right.
I'll give you a piece of trivia, though. If you go to an insane asylum,
people are hearing a third voice here. We should say,
I'm the mystery
who are we?
third
Who
voice.
is this person we're talking to?
that's our executive producer.
That's right. Wait, on
money's
Imus in the
running
morning,
out, guys.
Our Bernie McGurk from Imus is here. He's producing our show.
Actually, do you know Peter LaSalle?
No.
Okay, Peter LaSalle was the producer-director of the original David Letterman show. He actually went from Carson, and a friend of mine who I used to work with, Andy Gershon, that was his uncle, so I actually got to meet him. So that's like Peter LaSalle for us, so something like that. Anyway, should we introduce our guest?
We should.
Okay.
By all means, I've waited long enough.
Okay.
We should introduce our guest, absolutely. And if we can have some guest music.
There we go. This is guest
Here it
music.
is, guest music. You can't be introduced until we have really good music for introducing our guest.
This is good. This is the one. This is one that's the long queue for it. There we go.
Yes, we have a long queue here for.
It's okay. The anticipation's always good.
Why don't we just play music? It'd be a lot easier.
We've done that. When we had Tim Rockmore on.
All right.
See, hey, we could talk about all these past shows now because we have a giant archive.
We do.
Which people need to check out.
At tcbradio.com, which hopefully will be back on the internet by the time people hear this show.
We had a little technical problem with the domain name.
That's but it'll be fine. Yes. What am I listening to?
This is Pink Floyd's One of These Days.
Ooh, my son would like this. This is our new guest music. So you can't hear it, of course.
I can't hear it.
Wait, if I turn off our mics.
I really don't have a memory of it.
Here, we'll let you hear it
because
for a
of what I was
moment.
doing
Okay.
back then.
Okay, so who is our guest in the studio today?
So tell us. Well, I know who he is. So why don't you tell everybody who you are?
My name's Nicholas Politis. I'm a licensed professional
I see
engineer.
that. So Nicholas
Nicholas Politis.
Politis.
Yes, Politis. A nice Greek short name.
Okay.
As opposed to the long multi-syllable names.
My good friend is Michaelopoulos is one of my good friends. Okay.
I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New York. I have a consulting business, and I perform building inspections, perform expert witness testimony, and make plans for extensions, etc., for basically the residential market in New York.
And
considering how hot real estate has been, I thought this would be a great little topic.
Well, I just went through this recently. A man like me who screwed me to the wall, as we were talking about. I had the unfortunate task of having to sell my in-laws' house in Teaneck, New Jersey, and we did.
A good son-in-law.
Oh boy, unbelievable! So we had a nice buyer, etc. We did. And the inspection, which you have to do, and then they come back and they start negotiating like crazy. Then that deal falls through. Fine. Go back again, new contract, the whole shebang, and inspection. And this guy is a killer. I mean, he found if a nail is out of place, what has to be done. So we had to redo, termite damage. I had to rebuild the whole house. And then they asked for like an enormous amount of money back. Because of whatever. People get crazy. And I said to the broker, I'm not giving you a new house. This house is 80 years old. I'm not rebuilding the house. You guys are nuts. But I needed to sell the house. I gave it. But this is what, and we talked about this. Obviously, you need to make sure people are getting a safe house.
Correct. Yes, that's the whole goal of the inspection, to make the house
but the
safe.
goal of the buyer is to just get the seller to come down in price because the toilet isn't working. I want $15,000 off. This is crazy. There's a termite. You got to give me $20,000 off. And your job is to make sure they get a safe house. So the point is, everyone needs to get an inspector before they buy a house.
Oh, absolutely. It's essential because...
and do you give them a report in writing?
Yes, I give them. I always encourage my clients to be with me there because I like talking about all the defects that I find. And actually, I go over the major defects, and then when I write the full report and I fax it over to the attorney, they see it again, not only for the first time, for the second time. So I feel that a better educated consumer is better off making a better decision. But the role of the inspection is to basically make sure the house is safe, and in my opinion, up to code. Almost every house has major defects.
What's the first and biggest defect that most houses have that a new buyer who's going in should look for?
Every single house I do, electrical hazards. Incredible. Improper wiring, corrosion, missing cover plates where someone can put their hand to flick a switch. They could accidentally touch a wire where electricity is going through.
Well, what about the board? There's a big board in the basement usually.
Right. There's a board in the basement.
What type of board should it be?
Well, it should be...
This is good stuff.
Yeah, it should be mounted basically with pressure-treated type of wood right off the wall and the panel. And I started doing this 4 years ago. I started taking panel covers off because I was finding so many electrical defects. I was worried what was going on in the initial installation. And one time, fortunately, I was told by an old-timer, whenever you go to look at a panel or touch it in metal, always touch it with your knuckle. Because sometimes if it's wired incorrectly, the whole panel can be live. And if I didn't touch this one panel out in Suffolk County with my knuckle, I wouldn't be here doing this interview.
Now, what strength? There's certain like 200 amps or 100. Is there any certain minimum that has to be?
Most homes, the average house, 100 amperes. If you have heavy equipment like central air conditioning, you need 150 to 200 amperes, more than adequate. For that.
If you have 100, you're okay.
100 amp for most homes, yes, you're fine.
So the first thing you got to really check out is electrical.
The electrical, always bad defects electrical. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
It's interesting. One of the things that we learned in history was Hurricane Andrew came by to Florida.
I got a great story. Go ahead.
And it wiped out everybody because so many homes were built not to code. They would just kind of slap together when the hurricane hit all these homes. And, of course, all the home builders were long gone.
Right. But, Richard, I'm glad you brought that up. This is a true story. Hurricane Andrew. When that came in there and literally decimated Florida towns there was one house standing. This is a true story. There was a man standing there on his porch with his arms folded proudly. All the homes around him were gone. His house was still standing. Why? He was a retired New York City municipal engineer. He didn't build it to Florida code. He built it to New York City building code. New York City building code is the most stringent building code in the whole country, next to California, which has a stringent earthquake requirements.
We're going to talk more about this. This is amazing.
Cool.
But you know what time it is?
It's time for a break.
It is amazing. It's time for a break. I'm so excited.
This show flies.
We'll be right back. We are talking WCWP Web Radio in Brookville, New York.
When it rains, all my friends go away. Mommy scared the sky.
What's going on in the mind of a child who's lived through a hurricane?
You can drown in your bed if you fall asleep.
A lot. Talk to them. Reassure them. We can help. Call 1-800-789-2647. Trained and caring people are ready to assist you. This message is brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Okay. Look at those numbers. Woo! Look at those numbers! Yeah! Can you believe we get paid to do this? It's only Monday. It's only Monday.
Excited about what you do? Or pass it on? As a Junior Achievement volunteer, you can bring your enthusiasm to the classroom and give a few kids a little something extra to get excited about. Their future. Share a little something of yourself. Be a JA volunteer.
For information on how you can get involved, log on to ja.org.
Tion Watkins for the Sickle Cell Association of America.
Hi, I'm T-Boz. You may not know it, but I'm one of 80,000 people in America living with sickle cell disease. And I know it can be painful and frustrating to deal with, but you're not alone. Please talk to your doctor about effectively managing sickle cell disease and the potential complications related to treatment, like iron overload. Visit sicklecelldisease.org for more information.
As a dad, you'll probably spend years teaching your son how to hit a baseball, how to throw a tight spiral and hit a receiver, how to hit the strike zone. But the question is this: how much time will you spend teaching him what not to hit? Teach your son early and often that all violence against women is wrong. For tips on what to say, visit endabuse.org. Brought to you by the Family Violence Prevention Fund, the Waite Institute for Violence Prevention, the Ad Council, and this station.
And we're back. Okay, this is really good stuff. I want to hear more about houses and what to look for. And the market is getting, it's a little weaker now. Yeah. So we really need to, as a buyer, we have a little bit more strength going in.
Correct.
To negotiate. And that's where you come in. Do you have a website? How do people reach you?
Yes, I have a website. Well, the name of my company is Alpha, ALPHA Home Inspections. My website is inspector-engineer.com. If you have any questions whatsoever, you could feel free to log on and send me an email.
Inspector-engineer.
A little hyphen, inspector, a little hyphen, engineer.com.
That's a nice, easy website to remember.
Yeah.
Phone number?
My phone number is 516-428-1649.
And it costs only a few $100s to do it, probably, and then you could save people thousands
of dollars. The average cost is $400 to $500, but usually a lot of people get an adjustment in price due to serious defects.
As I was saying, for many thousands of dollars.
So one of the questions I have is, if you're the one who's going to sell the home, should someone hire you sort of as almost a preemptive strike against your counterpart?
Absolutely. I can't understand why more people don't do that, because they would have the present condition of the house in hand. And if someone else comes to look at it and there's a difference of opinion, it can be refuted right then and there. I think it's a wise investment, so you know what you have and know what to expect when the inspector for the potential buyer comes into play. I think it's a great idea that he does that.
So I want to definitely get to some war stories because
I got some great stories.
Oh, let's hear some more stories. We got time.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you one story. I was in Sands Point doing a beautiful, huge ranch house, and there was torrential downpours coming down the night before. And around homes, I don't know if you know what window wells are. The windows are very close to the ground, and they dig out, and they put these like metal semicircle steel
I know them
barriers
well,
in.
yes.
So as I'm doing my inspection, I'm noticing that the window wells, the windows, it's filled up with water 3/4 of the way. So one of the buyer's wife, prospective buyer's wife, comes down. She goes to open that window. I says, "Do not open that basement window." Well, she goes and opens it, and there's like water just woof comes all in all over the place. The seller comes down all upset, telling me, "What did you do?" I says, "I told her not to open the window, and she did. All we need is a mop and a wet dry vac, please." But it was a little tentative at that point. You find little things like that with water problems in most homes.
Well, speaking of water, what about mold? I mean, we hear about mold, toxic
boy.
mold. You know,
Yeah,
That's
mold.
a biggie, boy.
in the last 10 years, all years mold.
I think hasn't mold been around since the beginning of time? Yeah,
Well,
right.
of course,
Okay,
but
right.
hopefully it's not in our
Right,
house.
well,
I mean,
you see-
rhinoceri have been around too, but I don't want
That's
one in my
true.
living room. You know,
Well, there's a big misnomer out there. Every house has some level of mold. The problem is the level acceptable to be able to live into the house. And there's only one way of testing that, and that's doing an air pump test to do that. Like I said, some places you could tell that they have serious mold and moisture problems, and you always recommend an environmental specialist.
is
come
it just in the basement or is it everywhere?
It's everywhere, but primarily it starts and originates in the basement, only because it's surrounded by soil, and the soil is always moist and it penetrates the concrete.
I got to ask this. You know, things need to eat. You know, like Rick and I always make sure we have a sandwich before the
Which
show.
you didn't bring today.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Failure on my part. And what does the mold actually eat to sustain itself? Does it actually eat like sort of the sheetrock, or? I mean, the water's like, you know, you need food and water, and I understand where the water comes from.
It's just a bacteria growth from being moist and wet. That's what it is.
It doesn't eat anything.
It doesn't eat anything.
How does it grow?
I think you're thinking termites. It's just a bacteria growth mold where there isn't enough air circulation and it hits like some kind of paper product or wood product, and there's no air for it to dissipate all the moisture. It just grows.
I think it's mold on your brain. What kind of question is that? I'm thinking of little mold creatures, you know, in my basement going,
right, but what are they
eating?
eat?
You know,
but
they're just growing. They're not eating anything.
But then how do they live? You can't live just on water.
Well, how do we kill them is the main thing. I mean,
It's
let's
not
say we
them,
find.
it's just a bacteria.
All right, so how do we
growth.
kill this bacteria then?
The only way to kill mold is first you have to find the source, eliminate the source as best you can, and dry out the basement and do waterproofing. And you have to run basically a dehumidifier during the summer in almost all basements. And that's how you control it, basically. It's easily controllable.
You know what you always see? You always see houses in some process of construction, and you see that kind of like lame blue tarp over it. And half the house is exposed to the air. And then what happens is, you know, April showers bring May flowers and September mold. And I always wonder, what are they doing to actually keep not just dampness, but like, you know, torrential rain off the beams, all this other stuff, because you know that the wind is just whipping and the water's coming in.
Right, yeah, that's true, but that's in the new construction. When that happens, usually it's still an open shell, so to speak, so there is a lot of air circulation going through to allow it to dry off the wood. So it's not a big a risk.
Well, there's a huge. I was just down in Florida, and there's still tons and tons of houses down there with that blue tarp, you know, from the hurricane. That was, when was the last? August? When was the hurricane? I mean, it's still not done because they just don't have enough construction crews down there. So you wonder, you know, a big rain, how it doesn't just come in there, but who knows? Anyway, so electric, mold, water in the basement.
Yes.
Now, what happens
problem.
if there's, you know, water coming through the wells, the window wells, or the basement?
Comes through
what do you do?
foundation walls, foundation
So what do you do?
cracks. Basically, what you have to do is try and find and eliminate the source from the exterior. You do some kind of waterproofing to divert the water away from the basement. It's not highly technical items.
It's called a French well, dry well, or something.
Well, I think you're thinking of French drain, which is
French
a different
drain,
situation.
yes.
French drains originated from England and France, where
I once went out with a nice French
are
drain.
open drains. Yeah, they're basically open drains. And usually when you can't control water from the outside, you have places where you're at a high water table and there's streams running underneath your structure. So water's going to come in no matter what you do. So you build these French drains. They channel around the perimeter of the building, put perforated pipes. They pitch it to a sump with a sump pump. So when the water comes in, it allows the water to come in, but not into the basement area. Channels it into a sump pump and pumps it out to the exterior safely away from the house.
Let's talk termites.
Let's talk termites.
It seems like every house, particularly Long Island. I mean, we're in Brookville, New York, which is Long Island. I think we are the termite capital of the world here.
Oh no, you're not. I'm sorry.
I'm glad to hear that.
You're basically here, parts of Queens have very high incidence of termites. And the reason I know this, so I have to go for continuing education credits, and I always talk to the technicians that are in the field that actually do the work, and I get my information from them. Termites happen in almost every house I inspect, and it's a normal process. Some homes are more susceptible to them, but I have to tell you, with clients, if they just hear the word termites, they do cringe. They're very fearful of them. But the good thing about termites is if you see them and there's evidence of them, if you address it quickly, it's no problem. If you let it go on for 7-8 years, then you get into major structural damage, which I found.
Now, that's what we had to deal with in
Major,
Teaneck, where
really?
we had to practically rebuild this whole house because my father-in-law, I don't think, did anything for years. And the whole structure was, they said, this house can fall down. I mean, it was crazy.
Right, they just multiply and multiply. It's just a new family being born over and over again.
With respect to termites, they eat wood. But
correct.
But
and little children.
But the new wood today is not really wood. It's like particle board. It's kind of like a
Still
bunch
wood.
of sawdust, and it's all glued together with chemicals. Do they still eat that?
Yes, they eat that. Well, they actually eat sheetrock.
They do.
The paper on the sheetrock. They're attracted to it. Yeah. The termites eat that. They eat any kind of wood members. A lot of people have wood paneling, tongue and groove wood paneling in basements. There's a plus side and a downside to that. The plus side is the termites will get to that wood first because it's usually a softer wood to eat. The downside is it attracts them to that. The other upside to that is they'll get to that wood and not to the main structural beams.
Oh, so you divert them with a snack.
You divert them with a snack. Yes, exactly, Richard. Excellent.
So now, it could cost thousands and thousands of dollars to have it to be treated, and then secondly, to have a contractor come in and fix all the structural damage.
Right. The worst case scenario I saw, if I can tell you a quick little story, there was a house out in Seaford. The outside was redone. It was just a stunning house with a lot of flowers, greenery. An older lady was selling it, and I go down in the basement. The agent's upstairs. I'm down doing my thing. And I'm looking, and I had a bad feeling. I found some evidence of termites in one remote area. So I'm looking at the main girder. The main girder is what supports the wood beams and the floors and so forth and the walls up above the 2 stories. And I'm looking at it, and what happened was I get my knuckle and I'm knocking on the wood. So as you're knocking on the wood, I hear a thud type of sound. Then I hear a hollow sound. So I get my screwdriver and I put very little pressure. It goes straight through the main girder at one end. I take it out, I take my fingers, and I literally rammed my fingers without even hurting myself. The termites got to the main girder, started eating from the inside out. As I started investigating it, they ran from, the beam was about 35 foot long, they ran 30 feet damaged. About 80% of it was damaged, so it had to be replaced. I called everybody down to show them what the problem was. In that case, that's a job that costs anywhere about $18,000 to $20,000 to replace that beam.
Wow.
That's worst case scenario.
Yeah, but a beam here, a beam there.
This is the main girder. It's different. If you have a couple of floor beams, you just reinforce them, change them. It's minimal.
How much did that cost?
The average beam, $400 a beam, labor and materials.
Yeah, well, I'll
floor
tell
joist.
you, in
Yeah.
Teaneck, this cost me $12,000 in rebuilding the structure of this house because it hadn't been touched in 40 years, I think. So, I mean, so everyone listening out there, you better go get a termite inspection now and get it treated and get this figured out before you go sell your house. And
or buy it.
Yeah, and be ready for it, or else you're up the creek.
That's
But
right.
guess what? It's time for a break. It's so exciting. We're going to be back really soon on Web Radio WCWP. We're going to talk more about what you should do to protect yourself if you are buying a house, and especially what to do if you are selling a house. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
They're going to jump out of trees. They'll go down the slide head first. They'll make parachutes out of sheets. But one of the most dangerous things kids will do happens while they're sitting perfectly still. Kids who ride in a car without a booster seat are much more likely to suffer serious or fatal injury, but amazingly, 80% of all kids who need them aren't in them. After a toddler seat and until they're 4'9", booster kids. And don't let them down.
Go to boosterseat.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
I'm inspired to serve my community based on the fact that I get so much back from it.
Ken Wyben, USO volunteer.
This is a great country, and if people were to go ahead and step up to the plate by volunteering or doing something for their fellow man, this country will be greater than it ever was.
Lead, inspire, change the world again. Join thousands and find which volunteer opportunity is best for you. Call 1-800-424-8867 today or visit www.getinvolved.gov. This message is brought to you by the Corporation for National and Community Service on this station.
I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about 12 years old. I was bored and I thought drugs would be exciting.
I started doing drugs because I was shy. I wanted to fit in.
I thought using drugs was a good way of dealing with stress.
My parents must have told me a million times, don't do drugs, they'll ruin your life. Now I know what they all meant.
People often begin using drugs as a solution to a problem. Eventually, the drug use itself becomes a much greater problem. Call Narcanon Arrowhead today at 1-800-468-6933.
Meeting teen girls online is easy. All you really have to do is go into a chat room and start talking. Once we start chatting, I act as cool as possible. The more we chat, the more they trust me. When they send their picture, I tell them how hot they are. After I convince them we're soulmates, I ask to meet in person. Once that happens, well, that's when things get really interesting.
Online predators know what they're doing. Do you?
1 in 5 kids online is sexually solicited. Visit cybertipline.com. A message from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Ad Council.
And we're back. It's a wonderful day here in Brookville, New York, and springtime is hit. We can tell what season it is, at least. It's lovely, and well, you know what I like about springtime?
Springtime for Hitler?
That's right. I love that. I hope people know what that is.
It's from the producers. Don't send any letters.
That's right. It's facetious. It's sarcasm. Mel Brooks. Anything Mel Brooks, at any rate. But springtime is a lovely time. Now you don't have to wear heavy coats, and beautiful people are walking the streets of Manhattan, and then there's you and me.
That's right. Watching.
That's right. We're watching.
There's no mistake that we have the studio in the radio station with the window.
And we can see all people walking by. It's beautiful.
It's like the Today Show. People, with signs. Hey, Rick.
That's we should have a live audience.
We've had a live audience.
Yes,
Sure. Live's a good idea.
We had a live audience a couple times.
We should have a bigger live audience.
You know what? If you want to go to tcbradio.com, you want to be part of the live audience, we'll have special things for you.
And see, now we're on Thursdays at 2:00
and Fridays.
And Fridays at
I think 8.
Now we could do our Friday show live.
We could.
8 in the morning, 8 to 9 live. That we could do. I would do that.
Okay.
Sometimes, maybe, if I'm not playing golf. But if we had people here looking at us through the window and placards and all that, I think that would be very exciting.
But we have that.
Well, fake people.
Well, yeah.
I want real people. You know.
You mean the people I pay $5?
That's right. We'll pay them to come and make
They
fun
just
of us.
stand. They don't move for $5.
Anyway, we're talking about houses and how to protect yourself. This is very serious stuff.
Oh, by the way, if you're listening, so take a look at the tcbradio.com archives and check out the section on title insurance, because that's like a related show.
Ooh, is that a good show?
All right, it's a related show.
It's a related
talks about
show.
Because
it's a cousin show.
That's right, and that's an important other component. So one thing leads to another. So if you're listening to this, don't forget title insurance. But that's another show. Okay. Anyway,
Okay.
Nick, give us your phone number, web address.
Yeah, my phone number is 516-428-1649. My web address is inspector-engineer.com. Nicholas Politis, licensed PE. I've performed personally well over 2,000 building inspections.
2,000 and
over 2,000.
Wow.
I want to talk about something that I've litigated a little bit.
Okay.
Radon.
Okay. Yes, radon.
And then we want to talk about asbestos, because
good.
I did 11 years of asbestos litigation.
I got a good one. I hope you don't fall off the chair with this one. This one's a good one.
Oh, we
which
like
do you
good
want to speak about?
Radon.
Radon's
Well, radon. Basically, what radon is, it's an odorless and colorless gas. Comes from uranium deposits in the soil, or the breakdown, and there's some radioisotopes, and they give off some radioactivity. And you find it basically in areas of mountainous regions, upstate New York. New Jersey actually has a state law that radon testing is mandatory when you're buying and selling a house. There's mixed.
Who has that law?
New Jersey.
That's what I thought.
That's
I had
right.
to go
It's
through.
mandatory.
Thank
radon.
God. That was the only thing that didn't happen. I didn't have radon.
Yeah. The bad thing about radon is they have like an analysis of radon. If you have very high levels of radon and you are a heavy smoker, it's like you'll catch a heart disease or a lung disease like in a 25-year period. That's the bad thing. The good thing about radon, if you find high levels, it's very easily correctable. It's basically increasing airflow. Something as simple as opening windows, something as more complicated as a ventilation system to take the air and ventilate it out through the roof line.
Where is the radon? Is it in the dirt in
It's
the
in
house?
the uranium in the dirt underneath the basement. It's the decay of uranium, which you find in soils all over the country.
Could it also be part of the bricks?
No.
No, so it's only from the soil.
It's in the soil, and the reason you have higher levels in the basement is because you're right there, right next to the soil, right there, and you're at a deeper elevation. But basically, there are radon maps available on the web through New York State, and they give you the incidence of high radon levels in Nassau and Suffolk County. You could go on, find out for yourself, and see if your area has high levels of radon. But basically in Nassau and Suffolk, you don't usually find high levels of radon.
Is there an association of house inspectors or
yes.
Places that people can go just to get free information of what they should be looking for?
Sure. One of the best websites and one of the best well-known associations is the American Society of Home Inspectors, which I am a full member of, ASHI.org. That is a national recognized association, and they have a lot of useful information on their website. And even if you want to find an inspector to inspect your home, you could click on there, put the zip code, and different people's names will pop up. You have to understand now with home inspectors, you do not have to have an engineering degree or be a licensed PE to be a home inspector. But New York State law now, you have and require a home inspector's license. That was enacted beginning of the year. Basically, my own opinion is you really should use a licensed PE.
What's a PE?
A PE is a designation of professional engineer, which is issued by the state of New York, And it just shows you had a rigorous education, a rigorous exam, 2-part exam that you've passed to have the basic principles of engineering.
Now, what about if I live in Florida or Pennsylvania? We have listeners from all across.
Right.
Actually, we're very big in Kuala Lumpur. So.
Actually, we have fans in Anguilla.
That's right.
We do.
Yes.
Especially the Dolphin Discovery Center.
And we have to go visit them.
Yeah, you know what? It's a great place to go.
Yes, we should. So, but we're in other states. Where do we find inspectors?
Same thing. ASHI, ASHI.org. They're all over the country. They're national. They're the biggest organization.
But you do Queens, Long Island. Will you go to New Jersey or just?
Well, I don't go to New Jersey because I'm not licensed to practice in New Jersey.
Okay.
I'm limited to New York. The best thing I can tell you is you could just call me.
What's
and
your
I'll
phone
take care
number?
of you. My phone number 516-428-1649, and I tell all my clients, you hire me, I'm your hired gun for the day.
And you get a full report.
A full written report. Consists of about 19 pages. A lot of information is repeated for a reason. And I always encourage my clients to be with me and to come with a list of questions. Prepare 2-3 days before on an 8.5 by 11 sheet because you will not remember the date of the inspection.
I got an interesting question.
Okay.
Let's say,
Look at that smile.
Let's say,
Look at this smile.
I got some schmagegi who's a licensed or an inspector, and he puts this report in, which is says you need $50,000 worth of work, and the house is going to fall down, and the electric is terrible, and you got termites, and you got water, and blah blah blah, and I'm the seller,
Correct.
and I'm saying this is nuts. Can I hire you to come in and say, this guy's full of baloney?
Yes,
as a rebuttal expert.
A rebuttal expert, yes.
Actually, I get those around maybe 10 to 12 times a year. And what I do is the way I approach it as a professional is I don't want to know the other person's report. I do not want to see it. I do not want to know what he said. I will give you my own independent report. Basically, but it is a great idea to do that.
But here's the thing too. I mean, It's like any relationship when you're at odds. Is that if I am hiring you on my side and I am the buyer, I want you to give me every possible thing. If I'm the seller, I want you to give me a report that has the minimum amount that I have to do to keep this house safe. I mean, you have to do what's right.
There's no such thing. I do it one way. I do it the same way, whether it's for the seller or the buyer. I just look for the defects. I give no opinions. I don't give estimates. I used to give what's called a guesstimate.
Mm-hmm.
A guesstimate is an estimate with a wider range because contractors' estimates really vary quite a bit, depending how busy they are.
So I can't say to you, look, just give me the minimum that you can do. Like, if you see an ant, it's just an ant. I mean, that doesn't mean they're.
I will say it's just an ant. Yes, if it's an ant. If it's termites, it's termites. Whatever it is.
Well, I'm not asking you to know.
I guess what it really comes down to is you need to know the truth, and then you need to work around the truth because, my friend Jerry Gusick, for example, knows a lot about homes, and he always says that there's multiple ways of approaching a problem, and you can use certain things to get more mileage out of it. And yet,
that's true.
Thing like that. But I guess, one of the questions that I want to probably ask as we're coming up to our final break, whizzing by, is about asbestos because
right.
I did asbestos litigation for 11 years. And I did, there's the property damage side, there's the personal injury side, there's a lot of mistakes in people's thinking about asbestos. People think it'll kill you, it has to really be in industrial settings. But I know that in the work that I do now, there's environmental control board issues in New York City.
Right.
And if you have asbestos, you can get hit with like $100,000 fine for improper removal. And worse, there's 2 fines. Let's say you hire the greatest demolition people, and for some reason they have a problem. Because you hired them, you're strictly liable. 100%. What happens to them happens to you. So you could have like a $50,000 fine on them and a $50,000 fine in parallel to you. And you're like, it's a $100,000 fine. A house was built 40 years before you were born. You may not know there's asbestos vinyl tile or there's roofing or this or that. And all of a sudden now you got a huge problem. It costs a fortune to dispose of. We got to talk about that.
Right.
We should talk about that, and we'll talk about it more very quickly and very soon after our break. But until we come back, you're listening to Web Radio WCWP, Brookville, New York, and don't forget to go every day to tcbradio.com.
Meeting teen girls online is
Wow,
easy.
this is great.
All you really have to do is go into a chat room and start talking. Once we start chatting, I act as cool as possible. The more we chat, the more they trust me. When they send their picture, I tell them how hot they are. After I convince them we're soulmates, I ask to meet in person. Once that happens, well, that's when things get really interesting.
Online predators know what they're doing. Do you?
1 in 5 kids online is sexually solicited. Visit cybertipline.com. A message from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and the Ad Council.
For some high school students, school can be a dangerous place.
A lot of gamers look at you as a gang member, too.
For some, just being in school can be a struggle.
I wouldn't go to school. I didn't care about what my mom said. My mom would tell me, like, what are you doing for yourself? You're not doing nothing.
But despite all the obstacles, inside every high school student is a graduate.
People look down on you if you don't have a diploma. I want to graduate because they say I won't.
Go to boostup.org and find out how you can help a friend, a son, a daughter finish high school. Boostup.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
I started using drugs and alcohol when I was about 12 years old. I was bored and I thought drugs would be exciting.
I started doing drugs because I was shy. I wanted to fit in.
I thought using drugs was a good way of dealing with stress.
My parents must have told me a million times, don't do drugs, they'll ruin your life. Now I know what they all meant.
People often begin using drugs as a solution to a problem. Eventually, the drug use itself becomes a much greater problem. Call Narcanon Arrowhead today at 1-800-468-6933.
They're gonna jump out of trees. They'll go down the slide head first. They'll make parachutes out of sheets. But one of the most dangerous things kids will do happens while they're sitting perfectly still. Kids who ride in a car without a booster seat are much more likely to suffer serious or fatal injury, but amazingly, 80% of all kids who need them aren't in them. After a toddler seat and until they're 4'9", boost your kids, and don't let them down.
Go to boosterseat.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
You are listening to the last 15 minutes of Web Radio WCWP's Taking Care of Business with your favorite host, well, the only host, Rick Frischman, stellar author and author of Author 101, best-selling book publicity, hot off the presses, and 10 Clowns Don't Make a Circus and other really cool stuff. I'm really honored that I know him. He's cool, and I've learned so much. He's really responsible for a lot of what I've learned. I'm like Grasshopper.
You're like the little grasshopper.
And I'm Rich Solomon.
You owe me the newspaper story. I talked about you in front of over 500 people at BEA, which is the Book Expo, because we met at Learning Annex, several years ago, and I taught people that you got to have a book, and we'll talk about this more in another show. But everyone needs to, even you need to have a book.
You know what? I think I will.
This is the guy.
That's right. Because if you have
You're the
a
man.
book, what does that make you? That makes you the leading authority, the number one guy on the subject. You could have a book. You don't.
About a series of books.
That's right. Exactly. So I told Richard that, and he came out with a book, self-published, called
Winning in the New York Small Claims Courts.
And from that, he has gotten tons and tons of publicity. Radio shows galore, TV shows, newspaper, and then the New York Times does a huge story with him at lunch with a huge picture, and it's like he's famous. Why? Because he is a book. And anybody, look, if I can do it, if Rich Solomon can do it, you can do it, anybody can do it. We teach you how to do it in the Author 101 series. In fact, everyone should go to author101.com and get their free $1 Million Rolodex. It's over 50 pages of information, and we help you just get started. But that's our gift to you. We got to get you to write a book.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Richard. Thank you so much.
And not only that, but you're going to take the CD of this show and you're going to post it on your website.
Oh, super.
Now we're talking.
I knew this was going to be a special evening.
That's right. And you know what? This show is really great. You're married, right?
Yes.
Women go crazy if you put this show on, like, at dinner time with a little wine. It just drives them nuts.
Actually, speaking of romance,
Should they have the wine before I turn on the show?
But this show always goes well with a little bit of Chianti.
Okay, gotcha. I gotcha.
I'm having a friend for dinner.
You knew where I was going with that. Okay.
But believe it or not, I have a legal relationship with the firm that actually was involved with the first part of that whole thing, but that's another story. Having a friend for dinner.
That's right. Okay.
Anyway,
but we were talking asbestos here before we got up.
Asbestos, yeah.
That's right.
That word that people cringe every time they hear.
Asbestos, I believe, is a Greek word which means unquenchable.
That's it, yes. It comes, the Greeks invented it, and it was used as a thermal barrier back then. And mesothelioma, that's where that word originated from, where they got the sickness from. They named it after that area.
No, the mesothelioma comes from the mesothelial cells, a very thin lining of the lung. And what is the asbestos fibers pierce the lung because they're like little spears. And it causes mesothelioma, which is a incurable cancer. It's actually awful. But one of the more interesting stories about asbestos is King Charlemagne had an asbestos tablecloth, and he used to clean it by putting it on fire. And it would just burn all the stuff in the asbestos would stay. It's
King Charlemagne?
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Good song by Steely Dan.
Did you ever see the show Pippin?
No.
Pippin is all about King Charlemagne.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and his son. His son was Pippin.
Oh, speaking of romance, because we're one of our past shows was on a product called Code Sex, Kodesex. That was the show with Dr. Ruth Westheimer. Code Sex is in this month's Penthouse magazine. We discovered them first.
We did.
We scooped.
And how did? So, are you saying you read Penthouse magazine?
No, because the people who were from Code Sex said that they made it to Penthouse this edition, and it's probably.
But you haven't seen it yet.
No. But I will be asking.
Will you report back on it?
I will be asking for a review
That's
copy.
Right. I want a full report, a written report on that.
And I'll get you a nice clean one in a plastic, so you know it's not.
That's right, not touched by human hands of any. But back to asbestos. So how do you find if there's asbestos, and what do you do?
Asbestos, by law, the only way you can call something asbestos is sending a bulk sample to a laboratory. By law, we're allowed to call it suspect asbestos, but most homes that are 50 years or older, a lot of them have old steam systems, and asbestos insulation was used because it's a great insulator. The problem is asbestos, if it's in good condition, it doesn't pose a threat. But when it's in friable, we call it friable or flaky condition, then what happens is the fibers are just floating in the air, and you can't see them with the naked eye. You need a microscope. You inhale them, it causes scar tissue. Just like Richard indicated.
Asbestosis.
Asbestosis, right. Again, with asbestos, you become very ill if you're around it for an extended period of time with no protection. And again, if you're smoke on top of it, it just accelerates the deterioration. Right, Richard?
It's something like if you are exposed to asbestos, I don't know, you have 5 times the chance of getting lung cancer in comparison to the general population. But if you smoke, it's like a 50 times.
Correct.
Right? It's like a super accelerant. It's a very toxic cocktail of asbestos and smoking.
Right. I can tell you, well, in a way, it's amusing, but it's like it was terrible what happened in one inspection. I'll never forget. It was a house in Queens Village. I went down in the basement. There was asbestos on the steam pipes, and it was in very bad condition. I said, this is suspect asbestos. Hire a licensed abatement contract, and he'll remove it. It's not a lot. It's a minimal cost. So what happened was I did my inspection. A few days go by. The buyer calls me up. They said they went and looked at the house, and they said that the people removed the asbestos themselves and placed it in plastic bags outside on the curb. I says, you're not allowed to do that. That's a federal crime. I said, you just cannot do that. So I hung up the phone with her, and I guess the message got back to the sellers. And then she called me up. She goes, remember I told you the asbestos they took off and put in a plastic bag on the curb? She goes, yeah, well, they heard that they could get arrested, and they took it and placed it back on the pipe. I says, yeah, you know what? I says, you really can't go in that basement anymore. You have to get it cleaned up and get air sampling done and get clearance from a licensed lab. I mean, that's like one incident I've never seen again. That was one in all the homes that I've done. But, when you do things like that, then it gets very bad.
You know what I actually did a little bit in my time? Lead paint litigation.
Lead paint also,
What's the deal with lead?
The deal with lead, see, almost every house has lead paint. What happened was in the 70s, the government redefined lead paint. You're allowed to have 0.5% of lead in paint, and then you're allowed to call it lead-free.
That's our
Leave it to the government. Yeah. Well, with lead paint, what happens is with young children under the age of 9, if there's any renovations or you have old wood windows, if the house is old, you have like 7, 8, 9 layers of paint. So whenever you open and close a window, you do renovations, you create lead dust. What happens with lead dust is kids crawl around, they put the fingers in their mouth, and they take the dust, they inhale it, and it elevates their lead levels, in their circulatory system, and it could affect them developing.
Big brain problem.
Very, very bad. What happens is, and it's really geared towards young children. So you have to be very careful when you do renovations in a house. And whenever I tell people, I always put in my report, you have to have a lead risk assessment done whenever there are young children involved. It's a very inexpensive test.
2 pieces of trivia. Do you know why children actually eat lead paint chips?
No.
It's sweet tasting.
It tastes like candy.
So it's like an attractive
It's
nuisance.
an attractive, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Second piece of trivia. Do you remember like the old Romans, like Id Claudius and all that stuff? They used to drink like wine out of lead goblets.
Yes.
So they all got demented.
They got demented early. The Roman Empire was like notorious with their drainage system and all their baths, their Roman baths and all.
They were brought down by bad
China.
China.
By lead. That's what got them crazy.
That's what got them crazy. That's why, like when you saw like on the public broadcasting system, the Id Claudius system, the Id Claudius series, and he was kind of like talking a little dopey. Because they were.
And it's just from drinking from lead cups.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
why did they make lead cups?
It's a very durable metal. It's very easily workable and lasts a very long time. That's why.
And Nick wasn't around in those days to warn them.
Yes, if I was, I would have warned them.
Do they have a lot of like lead stuff they drink from in like Texas by any chance?
I know where you're going with that. we want to syndicate the show.
That's right. So
lead's everywhere.
Lead's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Everywhere. That's right. Yeah. Tennessee, they got it. They got it everywhere. They got New York, the whole
Forest Hills.
There's so much lead around. You can't believe it. Okay, craziness. All right. Well, we only got a couple minutes left, so. Give us your final 2 tips on what to do when you're buying a house or what to look for.
When you're buying a house, I always tell people look at it twice. And if your gut feeling tells you there's something wrong, relay that information. Whatever you think is not important is important. And just relay that information and get a little notebook. And when you walk through the house, make little notes for yourself to give to the inspector or the engineer, because that'll help him guide himself towards targeting that area for you. And don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question.
What about insulation? I think, with oil pretty much never going back down again.
Never.
And gas
Natural
and all that.
gas.
All that stuff is just way expensive. We only have like a minute here. What do people have to do about insulating, re-insulating, shoring up insulating?
Yeah, it's always a good idea to have your house inspected, the condition of the insulation, because after a period of time, if it's fiberglass insulation, it usually settles and loses what we call its R value, the ability to not have heat flow out of the house. So it's always a good idea to do like an environmental checkup every 3 or 4 years.
Good idea. Why don't you just give us your information once again?
Yeah, sure. My name's Nicholas Politis, PE, Alpha Home Inspections. My number 516-428-1649. My web address, inspector_engineer.com.
So, and how do we reach you? What's your phone number?
My number, 516-428-1649.
Fantastic. Great information. Don't forget, you gotta get your house inspected.
It's the best money you ever spent.
And, you really, this is your biggest investment of your life. You must get it done. Great having you with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Post this on your website.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
And go to Rick's Cheap Domains to get more.
Yeah, you got to get some more domain names.
More domain names.
RicksCheapDomains.com. Don't forget that.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you need to get the Ortho 101 series.
That's right. Next time you're here, you're going to be an author of a book.
Okay.
You got
Does
that.
this mean I'm going to quit my job?
Oh, absolutely. You're going to get fabulously rich.
And, of course, you need a copy of Winning in the New York Small Claims Courts for all the deadbeats that don't pay.
Okay. Gotcha.
Richard is about to go after somebody for me, and then we're going to talk about it on the show. It's going to be fantastic. Web Radio, WCWP, Brookville, New York. Great being with you. Richard Solomon, Rick Frischman.
See ya.
See you next time, everybody.
Bye-bye.